Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Public Safety and Justice Affairs Committee meeting. It's Tuesday, October 29th. Roll call, please.
And just as a reminder to all who are in attendance, this meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the county's YouTube page. Calling the roll, Mr. Gallagher.
Here.
Ms. Conwell. Mr. Byrne.
Here.
Mr. Kelly.
Here.
Ms. Simon.
Here.
There is a quorum. Also like the record to reflect that Councilman Miller is in attendance.
Welcome, Mr. Miller, as always.
Thank you.
Before we start, we have a packed agenda, and we want to get through it as fast as we possibly can without missing anything, and then to get into our discussion regarding the county jail. But I just wanted to state this to open up. And as, again, good afternoon for attending this Public Safety and Justice Affairs Committee meeting hearing. I'd like to start by thanking the architects and the owners rep team for attending this meeting and appreciate the opportunity to receive additional information regarding the status of planning for the new jail. I'd also like to thank the administration for for being here and participating also with us as we move forward. This is a team, this is going to be a team project as always, and we look forward to moving this project as judiciously forward as possible. The discussion will be first of many, and we plan to receive regular updates from the design team on a number of standing items accompanied by topic area discussions. Our objective is to have council and stakeholders well informed throughout the process, as well as provide opportunities for input. We will address a number of design-related components prior to any bonding legislation being introduced in this early of 2025, and we'll continue to have updates in a public forum as the project progresses. For today's meeting, I would like to provide our guests the opportunity to go through their prepared materials and ask we reserve questions until they have concluded their presentations. Any questions we do not address during today's discussion can be reserved for a future meeting or provided to the team via email. There will be times because of sensitivities and security, we'll go into executive session, and we'll deal with those when we approach those situations. Again, that is for our second part. Let's move forward. Public comment.
No, Mr. Chair, no one is signed in.
Committee, in your packets, you have the minutes of our October 15th meeting. If they're in order, I'll accept a motion and a second.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Against? Thank you. 2024-0373.
Resolution number 2024-0373, authorizing an amendment to a revenue-generating agreement with the City of Cleveland for lease of space for the Cleveland Police Department located at 1300 Ontario Street, Cleveland.
Good afternoon, Public Safety Committee. John Myers on behalf of the Department of Public Works. We are here today to seek authority from County Council to enter into a Sixth Amendment of lease, a revenue-generating agreement with the City of Cleveland for lease of approximately 125,000 square feet in the amount of approximately $2.7 million for the next year. This is a Sixth Amendment to a lease. As you may remember, the county purchased this property approximately 2017. This is the Sixth Amendment for this space that for Tower 2, also known as Cleveland Police Headquarters, 1300 Ontario. So you have the outline of the agreement. This is an approximately 14% increase over last year for the base rent, and many of the other items are the same as the previous year.
Thank you, Mr. Myers. For the edification of the committee members that are unfamiliar, we purchased the Cleveland Police Station building. Is it 6 years ago now?
2017 was what's in my mind, Mr. Chairman.
Quite a while back. And they've been paying rent to us as they progress towards their new police station. It's been a good agreement for both sides, especially for us, which is rare. And we look forward to when they do move out, having at least that space for a little bit of time before we move forward on a Justice Center jail project there. Any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. What's the anticipated move-out date?
Mr. Chairman, to Councilwoman Simon, we are waiting. It's not a fixed date yet. The city has not been able to give us a definitive date. It likely will be beyond the extension of this lease, but we don't know. They're in the midst of their big construction project and have not given us a definitive date yet.
So we are extending the lease for a year?
Correct.
1 year? And you were able to get an increase, you said, in the rent?
Correct, yes.
Thank you. When you're negotiating this lease, is there ever any kind of discussion as it relates to the jail contract? Do you ever talk about those two situations when you're negotiating this lease?
Mr. Chairman, to Councilwoman Simon, I personally have not been involved in the jail discussions and have been primarily focused on the real estate end of this. The administration as a whole, though, has a collective working relationship with the city, and I know many things are on the table, but this particular healthy increase for this year has been my main focus.
I understand. Thank you.
And you would like to move this forward?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, with your consideration, given the uncertainties of their schedule, and we're presenting this,
Right.
that we'd like to have it, with your indulgence, in place as soon as possible.
And the dates line up. So if everybody's comfortable, I'll accept the motion for Resolution 2024-0373 to the full council under second reading suspension.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Against? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Meyer. 2024-0377.
Resolution number 2024-0377, authorizing purchase order number 24004101 with Integrated Precision Systems in the amount not to exceed $511,755.35 for a state contract purchase with an installation of intrusion alarm system, access control panels, video surveillance cameras, and various network accessories at 1801 Superior Avenue in Cleveland.
Who's here to speak on this item?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. It looks like somebody was supposed to be here to speak on this matter. Obviously, this is tied into the 1801 Superior project. I was under the impression that IT was going to be leading the discussion here. So if you could hold this item for right now, and let me see if I can pull somebody together for this.
I'll tell you what, I don't have time for that. They're not here. We'll kick it to 2 weeks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
2024-0378.
Resolution number 2024-0378, authorizing an amendment to contract number 4921 with Applewood Centers for emergency respite and crisis bed services for youth referred by the Coordinated Approach to Low-Risk Misdemeanors (CALM) program.
Welcome.
Is this? Oh, there you
Your
go.
name? Your name?
Good afternoon.
Your name?
Sharon Allen, Juvenile Court.
Welcome.
This service is to provide screening and assessment services within the court's Early Intervention and Diversion Center and providing emergency respite and crisis bed for youth. The goal would be to provide therapeutic response to youth arrested and in need of respite and assessment services to divert youth from the detention center on non-public safety offenses. This amendment is 100% funded by the Reclaim Grant. The amendment is to increase the funds in the amount of $1,699,22.86, extend the time period of the contract to June 30th, 2026, increase the per diem rates in Section 5, Paragraph A, and replace the insurance requirements.
Thank you. And this is a contract that we deal with often. Questions? Yes, ma'am.
Through the chair to Ms. Sharon, was there any increase? I know it doesn't come from, we don't pay, but was there any increase in the funds?
Increase, the increase was in
Increased
the,
cost or anything like that?
oh, and the per diem?
Yes.
Yes, the increase of the per diem was $684.75 for Medicaid rate and $882.51 for non-Medicaid.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Further questions? And looking at the dates, you definitely want to move this forward.
Yes, please.
If everybody's comfortable with Resolution 2024-0378 to the full council under second reading suspension, I'll accept the motion in a second.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Against? Thank you, ma'am.
You're
Thank you, sir. 2024-0379.
Resolution number 2024-0379, making an award on requisition number 12965 to various providers in the total amount not to exceed $1,383,988.30 for interpretation and translation services.
Hello, I'm Marie Andel from Juvenile Court. This is a master contract for interpretation and translation services in the amount of $1,383,988.30 to go through 2026. This is to provide professional and technical sign language interpretation services and foreign language and translation services for the Court of Common Pleas, the General Division, Juvenile Division, Probate Division, and the Domestic Relations Division. We issued an RFP where we received 4 proposals, but went with the top 3 based on their proposal scores. This is late due to staffing issues within the court for the drafting of the contract and negotiations with the other court agencies about the language around the unit rate payment structure. We are requesting the resolution become effective immediately.
Questions? Yes, ma'am.
Through the chair to Ms. Maria. So you mentioned the various departments that this translation is for. That I thought this would be an overall contract for all the county, especially HHS.
They're not included in, it's just the 4 agencies. And I don't know how that became just these particular agencies and why not everybody's involved. Apparently, they're on their own.
Because I know we utilize those services for other things, so maybe we need to look at collaboration of why we wouldn't just pay one cost to see if it could bring it down. Okay, thank you.
Further questions?
Just a follow-up to that. So this is court, this is the court, did I hear you? That's the court, right?
Yes,
So they're different budgets, maybe? Why?
there are
It's
different
coming out of
budgets,
your
yes.
court budgets, right? Okay.
Okay. Looking at the dates.
Excuse me,
also, you
Mr.
wanna
Chair.
move forward.
This is the one that has the proposed substitute.
Is this the substitute?
Yes, you all should have it.
I'm sorry. Okay, we have 2024-0379 on the table. I would propose a motion to replace that with the proposed substitute that's before you. It's 2024-0379, same number and different amounts, correct? So the amount was changed by legal.
Yes.
moved.
If everybody's comfortable with that, I'll accept the second to my motion. Second. All in favor of accepting 2024-0379 as proposed substitute? Aye.
Aye.
Against? Thank you. To move forward, I would propose Resolution 2024-0379 to the full council under second reading suspension. Do I have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Against? Thank you.
Thank you.
2024-0380.
Resolution number 2024-0380, authorizing a contract with Applewood Centers in the amount not to exceed $3,499,072.50 for program administration of a youth residential treatment program known as the Cognitive Behavioral Treatment Center.
Good afternoon, Sharon Allen, Juvenile Court. The vendor shall provide trauma-informed residential treatment services along with the 2 University of Cincinnati Correction Institute's cognitive behavioral interventions, core youth curriculum and cognitive behavioral interventions. Substance use is to address thoughts that contribute to continued high-risk behaviors in youth and address their cognitive, emotional, and behavioral challenges across the following domains through family, peer relations, substance abuse, pro-social skills, and mental health. The contract is 100% funded by the Reclaim Grant. The court desires to contract with the vendor for a term starting July 1st, 2024 until June 30th, 2026. Funding for this contract shall not exceed the $3,499,072.50.
Questions? Hearing none. If everybody's comfortable in looking at the dates again, you probably want to move this forward.
Yes, please.
Yes. If everyone's comfortable with 2024-0380 to the full council under second reading suspension, I'll accept the motion in a second.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Against? Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
2024-0381.
Resolution number 2024-0381, authorizing a contract with Dell Incorporated in the amount not to exceed $978,007.19 for a state contract purchase for a Microsoft Enterprise Agreement for various software licensing and support services for a period of 3 years.
Good afternoon. Pete Seghetti presenting for the County Prosecutor's Office. This is our fourth three-year enterprise agreement with Dell for Microsoft Services. This is a comprehensive contract actually with Microsoft ultimately to provide all of our Office 365 user licenses, server and PC operating systems, all security components, and database licensing. Peter Seghetti.
If everyone's comfortable in looking at the date, which I really don't have one on here, are you requesting this to be moved forward?
It can. It's this contract is effective for early next year, so we wanted to be timely to get the contractual portion taken care of because we just wouldn't have enough time to meet a February deadline starting the process in January.
If everyone's comfortable moving 2024-0381 to the full council under second reading suspension, I'll accept the motion in a second.
Second.
Motion in a second. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Against? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
2024-0382.
Resolution number 2024-0382, authorizing a contract with Axon Enterprise in the amount not to exceed $5,960,835 for state contract purchase for digital evidence management software with associated cloud storage, maintenance, and support services.
Good afternoon, Pete Seghetti again for the Prosecutor's Office. We've really incurred a massive increase in body cams, vehicle cams, pole cams, drone footage. This is all material that has to be received, assimilated, and processed by the Prosecutor's Office. There's just no way to meet this burden with some very specific tools. The Axon Justice Premier product line is one of those tools. The key areas that it helps us address are storage. We've seen a massive increase in storage requirement over the last 4 years from approximately 70 to 180 terabytes, over 150%. Another area that the system provides assistance with is AI-assisted assistance with redaction. So many times we will receive 5, 6, 7 videos from a single scene, different angles. This redaction software allows you to pick, for instance, license plates or faces that you wish to have redacted, and then automatically seeks and redacts those images in the other files as well. Another key component is transcription, basically taking the audio file or the audio portion of a video and creating a text-readable transcript file. That is also key to leverage researching and looking for search terms across many videos. Discovery is also greatly enhanced with this product. It allows us to provide automated links for discovery, and also other partner agencies, for instance, the public defender can experience, increased efficiencies because they're also an Axon partner in viewing the discovery. And last but not least, It's the one I'm personally most excited about, is the automation opportunities that this platform provides. It's going to allow us to programmatically proceed and greatly reduce the human administrative burden involved with everything related to video, from requesting the videos, providing the videos, processing them. It's a fantastic opportunity, and we will be one of the first major metropolitan areas to attempt this level of integration. So we're very excited about it. So the bottom line is, this is absolutely essential for the prosecutor's operations today and going forward as well.
Questions from Mr. Seghetti? Yes, Mr. Miller.
So, Mr. Chairman, it's unusual for us to bring a 10-year contract. What is the reason for having this long of a contract?
The Chair to Mr. Miller. The term of the contract, there's actually a 5-year sort of checkpoint in this contract, which allows us to proceed or not proceed for the remaining 5 years. Additionally, there is a 30-day out in this contract. The longer terms were required by Axon to sort of lock in that best pricing for the entire term of the contract, but we fully have a 30-day out with provisions made to receive our data should there be a need to.
So, was this contract provided for in the current biennial budget, or is this an additional expense that's new and not anticipated?
I would refer that question to Mr. Ginley, our fiscal director.
Good afternoon. My name is Jim Ginley. I'm the fiscal director for the prosecutor's office. No, it was not. This is a service at some level that we've been provided pretty much free, and now it's got to be paid for.
Okay. And final question, you mentioned the benefits that you said this would have in making our video work easier in a lot of different ways. My question is whether this contract will save enough money in the video operations to pay for the cost of the contract.
Some of the elements are just not possible without the tools to do it. I would liken it to, asking carpenters to build a house without any type of saw. You have to have the basic tools to be able to do this. Otherwise, it becomes such a burden. I couldn't imagine the amount of paralegals, et cetera, that you'd have to review, hundreds and hundreds of hours of video footage to accomplish these tasks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
For future reference, if you're going to go over the 5 years, we usually stay within 3, and especially because it's a new expense, it really probably should go to Mr. Miller's committee because it is affecting the bottom line on the budget. We are coming up to a review, which I assume we'll be reviewing that when we get there in the next month or two. Okay? But for today, if everybody's comfortable, and again, I'm looking at the dates, you would want this to be moving forward. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes.
If everyone's comfortable with Resolution 2024-0383 to the full council under second reading suspension, I'll accept a motion in a second.
So moved.
A motion and a second. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Against? Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
2024-0384.
Resolution number 2024-0383, authorizing an amendment to a revenue-generating agreement with Securus Technologies for inmate telecommunications system and maintenance services.
Sorry, I said the wrong number. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, council members. Chris Costin, Business Services Manager, Sheriff's Department. Before you is a request for an amendment with Securus Technologies that will add $3,250,000 to the current contract. This contract is for the inmate telecommunication services in the jail. The amount being requested should take us through the end of the current contract term of September 6, 2027, based on the current spend. Funding for this contract comes from our commissary funds. Thank you.
Questions? Mr. Miller.
What kind of communications does this pay for?
So this allows the inmates to purchase phone time. They also allow let me find here. Videos, games, TV shows, music subscriptions. The only commission we get is off of phone time. Phone time can be by the inmates or people outside of the jail.
And do we currently do any in-person visitation? And if not, are we planning to do so in the future?
I couldn't tell you about the plan, but as of now, there is no no in-person. It's all done through video visitation within the jail, and there's no cost for that.
We'll see that in the presentation, and there is plans for that.
Okay, thank you.
Just a question, Mr. Chair. Is the plan still in place to provide tablets for the inmates?
Again, fiscal is not aware of the plan. That would be a question for the jail staff.
Okay, so this is not,
This has
is
nothing
just
to do with-
business as usual?
Business as usual in the
Business
current
as
jail,
usual.
correct.
Okay, thank you.
Nothing with the future jail.
I don't know if the tablets were for future, for the jail. I thought they would have those at the current jail.
We might have an answer for you.
Greetings, all greetings. We do have tablets at this particular time. And as far as the other question about
Excuse me, I'm
visitation-
sorry. Can you speak into the mic and state your name, please?
So, I apologize. My name is Nestor Rivera, Senior. I'm an interim chief over corrections. And I believe the councilwoman's question was, do we have tablets at this time? And the answer to that is yes, we do. We currently have tablets.
Are they using them?
They are. Unfortunately, we have some that are destroying them, but
Oh, okay.
they do have them, they do utilize them, and they're effective. So we're
Great.
glad to have them.
Thank you.
Anything further? Okay, if everybody's comfortable with resolution, and again, looking at the dates, I would assume you want to move forward. Yes. Resolution 2024-0383 to the full council under second reading suspension. I'll accept the motion in a second.
Wait, did you say 8-3? 8-4?
This is 8-3. I initially said,
Oh, okay.
I initially said 8-4 mistakenly.
Oh, got it. So moved. Sorry if I stepped.
We have a motion and a second. Yeah. Any further discussion on 8-3? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Against?
Thank you.
Thank you. Now on to 2024-0384.
Resolution number 2024-0384, authorizing an amendment to contract number 3094 with Motorola Solutions for vendor-hosted next-generation 911 services.
With Department of Public Safety and Justice. Nice to see you all again. It's been a minute. This is for an extension for a 3-year agreement for our current 10-year 911 system contract that we have. We're doing an extension, for 3 years. Last year, we started a process to develop an RFP with external people from Cuyahoga County that have expertise within 911, many of them part of dispatch centers, they're IT leads, for example. So we started the process, went through that process, and did develop an RFP so that when this contract ends, which is in March of next year, it would be released and we'd be ready for our new system. However, we finished the RFP but did put it temporarily on hold and are requesting a 3-year extension of this contract. And it's mainly for 2 reasons. One of the reasons is that our 10-year agreement also included a 5-year refresh. And so that refresh was every single piece of equipment that we have within the 911 system, including the 2 host controllers, every piece of equipment at dispatch centers was all replaced with brand new. We also received upgraded I guess, the top tier software that is used by Motorola was provided to us within that upgrade, and we did all the training countywide on all the dispatchers. And so we just went through that process, and that upgrade actually ended because of the training in November of '23. So one is that we have much new equipment in the system. And then the second, and really the larger region, is the statewide implementation of Next Gen 911. They've been actively working through the process of theirs. We put our paperwork in early on that when the state is ready for the statewide system and has it up and running, that we do want to be at, hopefully at the front of the line to migrate over. However, there was some delay. They currently have next year plans, starting mid-next year, to bring on the first of 6 pilot communities and then 4 more from the state that are going to pilot. If there's no issues after 90 to 120 days, then the state would formally certify the statewide 911 system, and then we have 5 years for it to be fully implemented throughout the state. And so really getting a better understanding for us of when we can best coordinate with the state, and they haven't been able to provide that yet too. So when we migrate to a new system with a new contract, that will also be connecting to the state system at that time.
In the times line up, you don't need this to move forward immediately.
We don't have to have it, no, because it's March of next year.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, if the council is comfortable in moving Resolution 2024-0384 to the full council for second reading.
So moved.
A motion, I have a second. Further discussion? All in favor? Against? Thank you very much.
Thank you, that wasn't bad. Thanks.
Under our discussion item, we have the Central Service Campus. Mr. Applebaum.
Mr. Chairman.
Welcome, Mr. Applebaum. Been a long time. And I will, again, caution the council, there's a lot of material here. You're going to have a lot of questions. I would hope that we could take notes. If it's imperative that you have to ask a question now, certainly you may, but I would prefer to just get through as much as we possibly can. This will not be the first time Mr. Applebaum is before us.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you. One immediate observation I have is that I have been appearing before you on various projects since your council first came about, and one thing which has changed, and I just realized it, I am the only person in this room wearing a tie. It will be the last time that I appear before you with a tie. That's my first observation. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you. Let me begin by showing you the agenda of what we hope to accomplish in the time that we have before you. I'm going to start out with a brief team introduction. Really, it's a reintroduction because the team has not really changed since for quite a while now. I'm going to give you a little bit of a brief background just to get up to speed with where we are. I have a few preliminary things I want to talk about with that. I'm going to address a few topics, and then I will turn it over to our HOK design team to lead the conversation about the progress on design at this point in time. They'll talk about progress with respect to the program, with respect to the site, and with respect to the building itself. We will then open it up for questions, and I know you've indicated that to hold questions, if you have a burning question or something that you just don't understand what I'm saying, I don't mind if you interrupt, but we do anticipate taking questions at the end. So just as a starting point, and I know that you know this, but I just want to remind everybody of, yes?
Do we have a handout on this?
We'll make this available to you. We don't have well, I don't know. Did you? No, but we'll make sure we get you one. I'll have this printed out for you.
Okay, thank you. Or you can send it electronically, either way.
Okay, I'll leave that to the technical people who actually know what they're doing. I don't actually know how all that works, but that'll be taken care of. So this first slide is just a reminder and just to introduce who's here to present. So as you recall, PMC, my company, and I am the Managing Director of Project Management Consultants. We serve as your owner's representative. I am here as the Managing Director. Two other members of our team that are working on this project, Ellis Katz, who I know you know and you remember because he was with us throughout the hotel project and has worked on various projects. Chris Panicki, who some of you may know, he's been with PMC for a while now. He's working on this project. He may have met with some of you. For the 10 years before he came to PMC, he was actually the university architect at Case Western Reserve University. So all of their projects, Chris was in charge of doing similar things to what he does with PMC right now. As you recall, we retained, after we did some of the initial programming, you remember with DLR, then we got to the point of getting the criteria architect who actually works through the program confirmation, schematic design, and design development before it's turned over to the design build team. That is HOK and a whole slew of other consultants, architects, and engineers. We have today Jeff Goodale, Jason Wandersee, and Rebecca. Where's Rebecca? I wanted to make sure you didn't escape, Rebecca. They will self-introduce. They'll go into a little bit more detail about their roles in a couple minutes, but they're here to present today on behalf of HOK. Obviously, not here today, but as you know, we have a design build team that works with us. They are very involved in the costing process right now. Eventually, the project will be handed to them to complete working drawings and actually build the project with their subcontractors at a point in time. In terms of the brief background, before I get into that, just a couple preliminary matters. And Mr. Chairman, you've already actually touched on this. First of all, we do have a commitment to continuing communication. Part of that, as you've discussed, will be in the form of presentations like this. There will be other opportunities to meet with and discuss matters with council. I know that council members attended some of our design meetings these past weeks, and you know, there will be opportunities to continue those forms of communication that we can discuss. You actually touched on the security issue I do want to present. When I did this in this fashion, when we did the convention center, when we did the hotel, I freely met with you, showed you plans and specifications, discussed all aspects of the building. Everything was very open book on those projects. The one distinction with the jail project is that there are areas and issues of security that get to for all sorts of reasons, things that are confidential about how a jail is set up, the security systems it has, how it operates. Those are not appropriate to present in a public forum. You've already mentioned the possibility of going into an executive session, so there's other methods we'll deal with that. But there will be some constraints on some aspects of what we talk about in the public meeting because it is a jail. And then, as you've already mentioned, there'll be topics that we reserve for future sessions. For example, we're going to want to get into discussion of budget with you, with schedule with you. That's not the topic of today. We're going to take on other issues today, but we will, as we agree with you, get into sessions that are much more devoted to topics like budget, like schedule, and a variety of other issues. So for today, just in terms of schedule, now this is a graphic. I actually have shown this to you for a few years. We use this sort of thing even during the steering committee. And this kind of just reviews, you know, how we started up, how we went through programming, how we went through the project delivery selection, as you'll no doubt recall. We are still in what I would call the conceptual design stage. Where that circle is we are trying to move through schematic design, which means confirming all the programmatic elements that are in this building, and then creating the initial layout design of the building. We are in that stage, trying to move through that stage, get final decisions, so we identify everything that's actually going to be in this building, how it is laid out, what the square footages are, what the adjacencies are. So that is the exercise that we are going through, and you're going to hear more about today. So that's where we are in the process. In the future, we'll talk about what the rest of this process looks like, but that is where we are today. The preliminary matter that I really want to spend a few minutes on has to do with the past discussions we've had of building height. I note that the public defender is in the room today. He sent a letter that I think, Mr. Gallagher, you saw, where he raised some issues about this. You've discussed this as well. So I want to be very clear about exactly where we were and what the discussion is which has taken place on the building configuration and building height. This begins, and we go back in time. It was in November of 2020. Now, that's still when we had a steering committee, of which, Mr. Chairman, you were a member. By the way, I'm going to give you references so you can go back to your books and you can see all this stuff. I know you still have the books, right? Okay. So there was a point in time when there were a series of options presented about what we were doing with the Justice Center taken as a whole. And at a point in time, a determination was made after a lot of investigation to reject the option of having an urban high-rise building or any form of a high-rise jail in favor of a lower-rise option for a whole lot of reasons. You'll recall at that point in time, there was still the effort by the committee to drive down the population, and we were still we had a series of agenda items to get the rated capacity of the jail. We were nowhere near it ever, or in 2020, but the goal was to drive down the rated capacity so we could build a jail that had a rated capacity of 1,600 outside of the city core. And that was confirmed by the 11/12/2020 steering committee meeting. At that point in time, we did look at some options for very low-rise buildings. The concept of actually a one-story option was quickly dismissed as impractical. It would have been extraordinarily expansive. The amount of property required for that would have been beyond anything that we were able to look at, and it would have been a very inefficient building. People would have had to walk hundreds of thousands of yards, officers, to get through the building. We'll talk a little bit more about that, but that was something that was out of the conversation almost from the get-go. There came a point in time, though. We looked through these options, and we spent, a couple years going through this, multiple presentations. But by January of 2020, we were actually already beyond the two-story option, the so-called 2/2. At one time, we were talking about a 2/2, which would be one of these configurations. Each story would have a mezzanine level. That's why it was a 2/2. But that option was gone, and I'll go back to the meeting minutes, because, first of all, by that time, we had already determined, unfortunately, that we were going to have to increase the rated capacity to 1904. Enough progress simply wasn't made to reduce the jail population, so the jail had to be much bigger, and we're still, by the way, at a rated capacity of 1904. Nothing has changed that evaluation. And there were also fit issues, because you couldn't really fit a 2/2 over any of the sites that we had gotten down to, the 40-acre sites, so-called. Keep in mind also, and I want to make this clear, there were discussions early on about what you could put on a 40-acre buildable site. That's assuming you could use every part of the 40-acre site for construction. None of the shortlisted sites that we came up with ever had actually 40 buildable acres. There were 40 acres, but within the 40 acres, you could only build effectively on a portion of them. So I just want to remind everyone of that fact. And once again, this goes back to the steering committee meeting at that time. So actually, we got to the point in March of 22, and we presented options. And we presented options to both the steering committee, and we actually came before the county council committee of the whole. Now, this was an executive session, so I'm not even sure if the graphic I'm showing right now has ever actually been shared. But we presented at that meeting in March of 2022, both before the steering committee and before the committee of the whole and executive session, we actually showed you 3 sites. You'll recall this because there were the 2 sites in Cleveland, the CVIC site, the Transport Road site, and then there was the Garfield site. All three of those layouts were either 3 stories or 4 stories. So every one of them was already either a 3-story or a 4-story building. They were still considered low-rise as compared to high-rise, but they were all either 3 or 4-story. And as a matter of fact, I pulled out of that presentation what was presented to the council. Now this is just a massing model, but what it does show is even the Garfield building on 40 acres was 4 stories. If you actually pull out the blowout and look at it, you can see the 4 distinct stories or 4 distinct levels. That's where we were on a 40-acre site. Now, so by March of 2022, the steering committee already knew, everybody already knew that we were talking about 3 or 4-story buildings. Still low-rise, but as compared to the high-rise structures, but 3 or 4 stories. Now, what then happened in that same month, I was asked to come and present before your committee. And this was, and what was going on at this point in time is there was, recognition that for whatever reason, the Cleveland options had been rejected. And we were asked to come back and say, well, wait a minute, can't we still find some options in Cleveland, even if they are on smaller sites? Can't we still build an urban jail even if it's a high-rise? And we were asked to come back and talk about the evaluation of high-rise versus lower-rise buildings. And you'll recall this because I came before your committee in March of 22. And we did the study that on the upper right-hand side, you can see actually the first slide from that meeting. And what we did is we compared urban high-rise with the campus-style low-rise. And we went through a series of considerations. You'll remember, because we had some other folks here from the jail administration. We talked about safety and security. We talked about building operations. We talked about construction and operation and maintenance costs. And we talked about flexibility for the future. And one thing I want to point out, the threshold that we were talking about, because we were talking about urban high-rises. In fact, that's a blurry image on the right, but that's the image that was used in that presentation to show an urban high-rise jail, which was actually under design in another very large city at that time. But the threshold that we were talking about, and it's actually in the presentation, because it's the high-rise code threshold, it's 75 feet as defined by the building code. So anything over 75 feet in height as defined by the building code, that was in the higher rise category. Everything below 75 feet was in the category of where we were working, and would include, by the way, the 3- and 4-story structures that we had already presented. That was the threshold that was used, and it's actually in the presentation. And we did say there were distinct disadvantages of high-rise jails, which is why we were going with the lower-rise option.
Right. Mr. Applebaum, for the
Yes.
committee's edification, the meeting of the Just Center Jail Committee of October 4th, 2022 was the meeting where the downtown Cleveland jail was rejected by that committee. Voting yes was Armand Budish, Clerk Byrd, Sheriff Hammett, Council President Jones, and Council President Blaine of Cleveland. The no votes that killed Cleveland and downtown Cleveland were Judge Celebrezzi from the domestic court, Cullen Sweeney, that would be Cullen Sweeney, somebody by the name of Bates, I don't know who that is, Judge
It was
Sheehan,
Kim Bates.
Judge Sheehan, Prosecutor O'Malley, and Judge Early. Abstaining was Mayor Bibb. So any further discussion about Cleveland, downtown Cleveland, look in the mirror. Go ahead.
Yes, and once again, we did have Cleveland. I'm not going to go back into this history, but we did have Cleveland options at that time. They were rejected. Right. So let me move on. Thank you. Let me move on. So now what is going on, there's the, the commitment to looking at this on Garfield, but now we get into the discussion of a 40-acre site versus a 72-acre site. Now, I'll go to another meeting because there's some interim meetings, but I'll go now to there's a committee, the whole meeting of this body on July 24, 2023. Here's the presentation made of the 72-acre site, and there was a recommendation to go to the 70-acre site versus the 40-acre site. These were the issues that were discussed at the time. One of them was you could orient the building better. Councilman Simon, did you? All right. I'll clear it up before you ask the question. One of them was that we could orient the building better. One of them was that we would have the opportunity for stormwater detention, because keep in mind on the 40-acre site that would have to be structure. On the 72-acre site, there was actually basins that we could do actual water retention, didn't have to build structure. We had the opportunity on a larger site for better transit connection, because now we could bring transit in onto the site rather than having to go to the street. And there was actually that little diagram, which was a rough representation on the bottom right-hand side that was actually part of that presentation to demonstrate that. We could provide for more flexibility for on-site parking and expansion. It is true that at that meeting, we also discussed the possibility that on 40 acres, it was definitely a 4-story building, that on 72 acres, we could consider the possibility of a three level building. Absolutely the case. And in fact, and it did provide us the flexibility to do that side-by-side investigation. Now, HOK is here because with that flexibility, we did go through, and by we, I'm saying HOK-led, members of the administration, members of the Sheriff's Department, those people who are involved in jail operation, and they did a detailed investigation of 3-story versus 4-story, and I'm going to have them walk through that with you, because that's really their expertise to walk through this. I will make 2 general observations before I turn it over, though. Number one is that throughout this process, and Chairman Gallagher knows this as well as anybody because he was there throughout all of these meetings. Initially, the starting point was an urban high-rise jail, which is what we have. We always talked about getting that height lowered and lowered and lowered because of safety concerns, because of operations concerns, because of elevator concerns, no question about it. Lowering that building was critical and still is critical. Getting it too low, like when we went to 1-story, that becomes counterproductive because now it's too low and too untenable and actually too costly. The 2-story, the 2 over 2, which would have had your administrative function beside it, not under it, that became untenable because of site size, and also we found out that operationally it was actually better to put it on a podium. That's why going into these discussions we were at 3 stories. The question became 3 stories or 4 stories. And I'm going to tell you that it's a question of finding the sweet spot. Too high is not good. Getting it lower and lower and lower and clearly under 75 feet is completely desirable. Too low is not good. So there's a sweet spot, and we were in this discussion between 3 stories and 4 stories, and where this has actually ended up is something that I would sort of describe as 3.5 stories, because when you take a look at how the building is articulated, it's not a monolithic 4th floor. It's a 3rd floor with additional structure on a 4th floor, but it's articulated. It's so you can get light in, and I'll let HOK go through this, but it's not a monolithic 4 stories. It's 3 stories with additional structure above it, and that is what the team has determined is the most effective, the most efficient solution. Still a lower rise building, but hitting what the team believes is the sweet spot. So I'm going to let them go through now and go through sort of that investigation, and then I might come back on questions, but that's the background as to where we are.
I have a question.
Questions for Mr. Applebaum before he goes?
I do. It says on July 2023, the Committee of the Whole made a recommendation. Committee of the
no.
Whole of this body?
No, what I'm saying is that the 72-acre site was recommended to the Committee of the Whole.
To us,
Yeah,
by this group.
by
By who? Because we keep saying we. At this point, who's the we?
the administration.
By the administration.
The administration at that time made the recommendation going to the 72-acre site, and that was the presentation, and those were the reasons.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
You did not recommend it
I remember.
to the administration. It was.
Yes.
you
I just want to be
particularly-
clear.
You particularly didn't recommend it to the
In
administration.
particular, correct. Okay, thank you.
Anything further from Mr. Applebaum?
And
Mr.
I'll be here for questions after.
And just to clarify, the podium 1, 2 is basically 3, but you call that a 2 over 2?
And I'll have Jeff actually show this in more detail. One of these floors, and he'll show you the detail of what a floor looks like. If you recall, when you're in one, and we're talking housing units now. When you're in one housing unit, you see floor to ceiling, which is an open concept, and you'll see the light, but you'll see that in terms of the actual cells, there's a mezzanine level. So you have a cell level, and above it, you have a separate cell level that you get up to by stairs. It's all within one floor of a building. So if you stack those, that's 2 over 2. Two levels of housing over 2 levels of housing, but it's 2 floors. The plan from the beginning was always to have 2 over 2. It became 2 over 2 over a administrative podium, and now, and it was either 2 over 2 over administrative podium, or basically 3 over an administrative podium. And that's what we're talking about. And Jeff, or 2.5 over an administrative podium. Jeff will show you that in detail.
Okay. Be kind to us, we're lay people.
Yeah, and one of the questions I had, Mr. Chair, is 2 over 2, is it like a loft? I mean, what you're describing is maybe a loft situation on
You know what,
floor
Jeff?
1?
We
No?
have show
Okay.
the picture, and the picture's worth 1,000 words.
We'll get to a picture to actually illustrate how.
It'll show you.
But
Thank you.
It's actually not unlike a loft.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do I advance with?
Green button.
Green button, thank you, Jeff.
You're an architect, you're an engineer, but you don't know how to operate that. It's a
You know,
green button.
I could make a mistake, all right. I did not wear a tie today. Chairman and committee, glad to see you today. Thanks for having us here. It's been a while since I've presented to this committee, so we're happy to be back. We made a lot of great progress on the project, and so we're really happy to talk about where we are with things. So I'm, Jeff Goodale with HOK, I'm Director of Justice, and I'm the lead planner and programmer for this facility. With me here today, and we represent a team that's probably 75 to 100 people right now working on the project. Jason Wandersee, who's a project senior principal with HOK. He's been very involved in this project since the day we were selected by the county. And then Rebecca Brandl's our project manager. So she works very closely with administration and other stakeholders to arrange the workshops and documentation, everything else. So she's doing a terrific job of advancing the project. Come back to the way that the building is organized, and Mr. Applebaum had talked about that it is kind of a hybrid of a third and fourth level building. When we were notified that this was the site, we started working very closely with the Sheriff's Department, the jail administration, other stakeholders to make a determination of how the building should be arranged and how the building would stack. As Jeff said, it was noted early to not try to do this on one level because, again, that was going to be an operational issue. Plus, it was also going to have some cost implications for the building as far as foundations and those types of things. So we always knew that it was probably going to be in that range of 3 levels or 4. And what we've done now is working with the stakeholders, then let operations really start to determine how these things are going to be outlined. So as you look at the diagram, the lower part
that's the blue, that is the Sheriff's Department portion. And at one time in the program, the Sheriff's Department was actually contemplated as a separate building. But working again with stakeholders, we made a determination that it would be efficient and desirable to have the Sheriff's Department combined with the detention center. And that way jail administration, Sheriff's Department could work together. They could share resources, training resources and so forth. So it'd be an efficiency not only in terms of what we build, but also an efficiency in terms of operations. It also gives the detention center the advantage of having a Sheriff's Department there for additional security in case, something would go unusually wrong at a given time. So you've got a ready-made security force there at the building. So a lot of advantages for that. So that blue portion at the bottom represents that. Then the rest of it that goes along that spine that you see then represents the detention center. And so the detention center is actually arranged very efficiently along one spine. So you see the edge condition and the nodes that pop out of there. In the middle is the vehicle sally port, very large vehicle sally port. You've got, we need to be able to move buses back and forth from court every day now. We have other transportation needs. And then at the top, or at the upper right, is a central utility plant. So that's also arranged for county maintenance to, better take care of the facility. I mean, this is going to be, if not but very close to the biggest client of facility management for the county. So they're going to be co-located here with a great deal of staff. Plus then that arrangement is going to facilitate being able to take care of the building. The housing units that you see that kind of pop up in the upper part of the diagram, and we'll look at a little more detail as we go, but the reason those come up that way is because we have a great deal of units, housing units at this facility. So Jeff mentioned before, initial build out of 1,904 beds. But in Ohio, meeting DRC standards, units can only be 48 beds. So that's the limit. And double banked units are 100 square feet. So often in a lot of jurisdictions outside of Ohio, that might be 80 square feet. But Ohio standards call for 100 square feet. So there's a couple of things with DRC standards that dictate the way that we have to arrange the building. So that's quite a few housing units, and it's larger larger amounts of areas for beds than you might typically see in other parts of the country. And why that's important is that does drive the size of our facility. It drives the mission of the facility. Within all those units that we have, and it's over 40 units, we took advantage of the opportunity to look at the way that a modern detention center works, the way that the jail administration needs to work with inmates, and some lessons learned from things like the COVID outbreak of how to arrange the facility and some of the things that came through. So one of the things that came out of that was the need for detox. More and more people coming into the facility, but even living within the facility need detox services. More, acute behavioral health. So I would say probably 15 to 20% of the beds in this facility address acute behavioral health. So these are changes that have evolved. This will make it a much more effective detention center. But why that's also important to this diagram is that we've arranged these housing units in that stack, and the reason that they're broken down the way they are is so they can get daylight and so they can get air. And so, what's one of the things that are important in this new operation is that inmate services are provided at the housing unit. And we'll have some pictures of the housing unit, see what that looks like. But what that means is they eat at the housing unit, they have video visit at the housing unit, they have medication passed at the housing unit, they can have some medical exams at the housing unit. Outdoor rec is available to all the inmates at their housing unit. So, but in order to accomplish that mission, we've broken down these areas so that each one can have daylight, each one can have fresh air come in, and at that rec space. So we'll look at that in more detail, but that is the part that really dictates that. Now, the last thing I'll mention about that is you can see those three units that kind of march along there that are up in that upper right-hand part. There's one common corridor on each level. And that's really the heartbeat of running the jail on a daily basis. There's elevator core in the middle of that. So coming up from the kitchen 3 times a day is food delivery, and then bringing back all those trays every day. Medical distribution of meds every day, 3 times a day. And other services come up and down these corridors. So the arrangement of this has really one set of corridors on an elevator bank, and then these corridors that run parallel. But again, working with the stakeholders, we really deem this as a very efficient way to move these goods and services up and down the building and then vertically. Another important aspect about the arrangement is that they have only a certain amount of time to get anywhere within the facility under emergency conditions, medical emergency or other emergency conditions. And in other tours that we went on, and this group has been on the tours of many different facilities, some lower rise, some higher rise, good, well-working elevator cores really benefited in being able to get through the facility. One of the tours we went on was in Raleigh, North Carolina. It was a facility that I was part of designing a number of years ago. Great facility, they'll have it, except as we talked to the stakeholders, it was arranged on 2 levels, and they told the tour group, they said, you know what, we really wish we'd have gone another level. We do a lot of walking all the time. So we took that to heart, and that was part of what's gone into the formula here.
Hey, Jeff, before you switch the slide,
Yeah.
would you point out,
Come on up, Jeff.
put the slide back? So one thing to see here, we put up on the slide the size of a football field. So that little box in the top left, that's a football field. So imagine now, so you have, and because of what Jeff has talked about in the size of these units, now you have your corrections officers either walking on an emergency, having to run. And if you see the size of that football field, you can get an idea of the scale. Now, if we were to lower the facility, and now you have to take those same housing units and you spread them out even more, you have more distance, and so it's a compromise of what's effective with one more stop on an elevator versus a horizontal distance you have to go. I don't think people understand the enormity of a facility like this, so that's the consideration.
Understood. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chair, I just to whomever about this, I'm confused why now this discussion is taking place when for years we were told preferably the lower the better. You designed the North Carolina jail. Did you not have feedback from them that they had wished it was higher because of the walking? Didn't this come into play? Because I don't remember having a discussion ever that there were these issues when we went as low as we had hoped, which was the 2-story. And now for the first time, oh no, maybe the first time was when we had the Public Works here talking about this, but why was this not part of a real discussion previously?
Once again, the discussion we had about high-rise was truly high-rise.
I understand.
6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11
I'm not talking about
stories.
that. I was talking about 1 to 2. We were talking 1 to 2 stories for a long time. And nobody ever came back, at least that I recall, saying, hey, there's some disadvantages to this. I'm hearing these disadvantages for the first time.
I'm going to tell you that in the steering committee presentations and even the presentations that were made here, we were at 3 stories. We were never at 1 or 2 stories for the longest time.
But what I'm saying,
Mr.
Mr. Applebaum, is, and I don't care, but the discussion about, you're hearing now from, you went to visit North Carolina Jail and you learned that they wish it was higher. Why wasn't that incorporated into this initial, presentation to us? Did you just find that out now, that they wish they had a higher jail that you designed? I guess what I'm missing is this discussion never took place. You could say, yeah, we talked about 3 or 4 or 2, but we never got into the weeds about why it would be not advantageous to have this size. So that's all I'm saying. This is the first time I'm hearing about disadvantages in this detail.
As far as, this isn't information we've just learned. In fact, we went on that tour 2 years ago. So in fact, that feedback's been in this discussion now for the last couple of years. We've also visited facilities that are also taller. Thank you. That are also taller. And so as the committee went through, again, we saw facilities that were 2 levels. We saw facilities that were as high as 5. And there was a back and forth about what seemed to be the right level. Now, whether that was presented to this committee, I think some of those findings came through, but that has been, that's been part of the discussion with the stakeholders now for this amount of time.
If I could help out here. I think because we had literally 2 sites. We had the preferable site in Cleveland before it was submarine by that group I mentioned. Then we were kind of forced to look again, and that's how Garfield came up. What I recall on the initial site was because it was only 40 acres and not all usable, the argument from the administration and others would legitimately was, hey, we'll get 72 acres and we can spread this thing out. Now, one, I understand, absolutely, it was too much, but this one, you have the football field, in my opinion, in the wrong spot. It should be where the yellow starts. They're not running from the administration
That's
to
true.
the end.
That's true.
They're running, and I worked in the jail, so you know, you're worried about COs overwalking themselves. You're talking literally if the functions of the jail are underneath food, laundry, security, the CRT team is somewhere, I would imagine, in the central area of the jail. You're talking guys sprinting about 100 yards at most to get where they have to get to, which is way more than what we have downtown right now. So the argument of, well, it's a little bit too far, kind of falls short to me, especially when I keep seeing a football field on the wrong part of the diagram. But we can get into the weeds on that after you guys get through this. And
And look, once again, there is a conversation, because the truth of the matter is that we have the option at Garfield to put it any height we could put it down at 3.
which was the argument presented to us.
I know, and it was what was studied, and,
Okay.
and we'll let Jeff get more into that detail. The one thing I do want to point out, though, is even the stuff that we saw before, all those were test fits. Those were to see what would fit, what wouldn't fit. They didn't get into, we weren't even starting into schematic design. We weren't starting into the detail to figure out what was actually advantageous and what really made a difference. And I will also say to you that over time, we had different individuals from the sheriff's administration whose views were a little different at the outset than they were later on. And our experts, there are different options, but they also listen to the sheriff's administration. They listen to the people in the jail. They listen into what their preferences are, because it could be done either way. And Jeff will show you that in a minute, the comparison and, what the staff came up with as to what they believe is preferable. So I think he can go on and continue to have this
we'll get into
conversation.
the weeds on this. As you can see, that there are some thoughts that we had heard one thing and now we're going down a different direction after being told that, we got more land so we can do more interesting things as far as the size of the jail being spread out. You mentioned is the Charlotte, what jail did you say that?
That one in particular, where we took the tour, was Wake County. That's in
No,
Raleigh.
the one you built.
I did that one, but then I did another one.
Was that on 72 acres?
Well, it was master planned for about 3,000 beds altogether. I would say,
Bigger.
as I recall, it's probably over 50.
Yeah,
I
so
think that site was over 50.
going forward, apples to apples will be appreciated.
Sure. And I will also point out that at the second level of where that housing is, that actually is housing units that extend down to where the football field does line up. So that housing on that second level extends. That is actually more of the behavioral care center that we have within the detention center. So that's also counted as part of it. So that is part of the jail operation. But as you pointed out, the other areas that pop up are shorter distance than the typical football
Just
field.
one quick question, if I can, Mr. Chair, since we're here. The Raleigh tour, who was on that tour? You were there, right?
Yes, I was there. We had different members from Sheriff's Department. The former jail administrator was on that tour. Some of the people from Public Works were there. So some folks that are still here today were on that tour.
And how many stories or floors is that jail?
Effectively, it's like 2 levels of, it's one podium, and as I recall, I believe that we've got just one level of housing on top of a podium, instead of another group on top.
Was there any feedback on elevator being inefficient to, for food and all that, having to be supplied?
There has been feedback on older facilities, and the way that we've addressed that and the way we addressed it at that facility and some of the other higher rise ones, we've just increased the number of elevators and the size of those elevator cabs. So I guess it was earlier this year, there was a group from the executive group also from jail administration that visited our facility in Indianapolis. That's a 5-level facility. In the core is 6 large elevators. Each of those elevators is large enough for at least 3 food carts or 2 stretchers, plus a number of inmates. We talked to the jail administration there. We looked at those 6 elevators. We asked the question, have you ever had a delay in being able to provide service in this detention center because of elevators? They said no. They said with 6 elevator cabs here, inevitably one may be being worked on. Elevators need to be worked on, but we always have 5 others, and so we've never had a delay. And so I took another group to one of our other facilities in Nashville recently, asked the same question. And they said, no, with our 4, it's a smaller, it's 800 beds, but they have 4 cabs. And they said, we never have delay in services with those. So what we found is building larger cabs and having a multiplicity of them has stemmed the issue that's been traditionally a problem with high-rise jails. Because older high-rise jails often had smaller elevators, not enough of them, and that was a real Achilles heel to trying to run those more vertical kind of facilities.
Thank you.
Okay, so Jeff referenced the fact that we've done a number of studies. These are just 2 of the different layouts that we had done, looking at, was it 2 over 1, 2 over 2, whatever that element is. And again, this just is an illustration of the different test fits and site fits that we've been doing for this facility. You can see from these 2 that in fact we have a larger, wider core. But one of the elements of that was, in fact, it started taking sheriff's department and jail administrative functions further away from the housing. And so we made the conscious decision to continue to consolidate those things. One thing I'll point out is we have a program to build here at about roughly 900,000 square feet. And some of these earlier test fits with more circulation at the lower level were exceeding 1 million square feet. The current one that we're working on right now is in that range of that 900,000 where we need it to be. We're continuing to refine it. But we have found by being able to do that stacking and to simplify the arrangement of the detention center, we're hitting our target on the square footage, which is obviously very important. Not only in terms of the initial cost, but just how many square feet, it is to actually have to operate and maintain the detention center over time. To give it a sense of scale, this is the current footprint that we're working with right now with the detention center. That corridor that runs on the 2nd level of the detention center runs over 700 feet, so that's a couple of football fields total. And as you point out from the elevator core, it's about 1 football field each way. But you can see in comparison to downtown, the mall that's shown there is probably a little larger than a football field. But again, it gives you a sense of scale of what it is for this facility to be at that 3 to 4 level size. I'm going to talk just briefly about the program that we're working into the project. And as I mentioned before, the mission of a lot of the housing and so forth is different than it was. More therapeutic, more behavioral health oriented. But we've been working with the stakeholders on all of these different elements. Entry and screening, visitation, those are really public-facing things. Staff support, sheriff administration are more staff support things. And then the intake and booking, decentralized programming, housing, all those elements. We've had a lot of workshops over the years. We've had 2 different jail administrators to work with. Actually, they saw many things on the same, through the same lens. So that's been helpful. And I can say again, the tours, whether it's Franklin County or other facilities, have been very helpful because people have not only seen these facilities, but talked to those operators. What's worked, what hasn't worked. And so it's been very helpful. But again, we've worked all of these elements of the program into that floor plate and into that massing that you saw.
I have, is this a good time to ask about that, or?
Sure, yeah.
If we can go back?
Sure. There we go.
Okay, so under bottom left intake, it says property.
Yeah.
What, can you expand?
Sure, so that is the property of inmates that have been taken into custody. So here you have police that make their arrests, they process inmates. They've been processed at the lockup at the police and they're taken here now, or they go through central
So
booking.
just where to store the property?
Correct.
So storage of property?
Storage of
not
property,
just
right.
property, okay.
Right.
Horticulture, What are you thinking about that?
So we're looking for the opportunity to be able to create an area where we can actually do some kind of plant growth or other horticulture program. We've seen horticulture programs have been very successful in other detention facilities. They've been a staple of prisons, but detention facilities have been able to utilize them more and more. So again, we're looking for a secure place.
Where? So they're there 30 to 60 days, and if they're there longer, they're going to end up at a prison probably. So if they plant a seed and they're, what's the idea? Where do they have this, that a pre-detention jail, that people are actually outside gardening? I mean, is that, so we're going to have COs out there watching them plant seeds? And where exactly is that happening?
So our facility that we did in San Mateo, California has a limited horticulture program. The facility that we are now designing in Brooklyn, New York, that's one of the replacements for Rikers Island, will have a horticulture program within it at the top of the building.
You said San Mateo?
San Mateo.
San Mateo?
Yep.
And you designed that?
Yes,
And you're designing a jail in Brooklyn?
correct, yes.
And you want to add the horticulture. Where else is this happening?
I can get you a better list of other facilities I could think off the top of my head.
Is this your idea?
No, I mean, not necessarily, no. This wasn't necessarily our recommendation. This is a program that we see more and more in detention centers. So it was discussed as a potential program here, and it's been, and currently it's being discussed as being part of this facility.
Yeah, I understand.
So no, I don't want to say that we said, hey, this is a great idea, let's go with horticulture. Our role is more what's being used. The sheriff's department really makes the determination on what the programs are. And our job is then to facilitate those happening. But they do happen in other facilities.
Okay, so if there's bind over youth, is that why you have youth listed opposed to general population?
There's a limited older youth group that is here within this facility. This doesn't represent typical juvenile detention. I believe this is
Bind over, that's what I
yeah,
said.
thanks.
Okay.
Yes, that is what you said. Yeah.
And what I don't see, and maybe it's here, is for municipal courts who might be using this facility to have a low-level population section. Has that been considered or looked at?
We have a video court capability here, so there is court capability here, but we don't have a specific municipal court currently in.
For low-level offenders versus more high-risk offenders. I don't see, you're putting those all into a general population, it looks like, as this is presented today.
Right. I mean, yes, if
Okay.
I could present general population broken down more into different categories. But you're right. Here, I'm just listening as general population. How the sheriff's department is going to classify everybody and how they're going to arrange them, that will be up to them. The general population design of the units is common, so they should be able, they can put who they want to in those different groups, and it gives them flexibility. So how they're going to handle the low-level offender, now we do have some dormitory space that is for low-level offenders within here. Most of the beds are within cells. So there's a different way, there's different ways the sheriff's department will handle whether it's a maximum security or a lower-level offender within the facility. The way we're providing typically court services is through video, and we have the option, right now we're talking about that there would be a central court attached to the intake and central booking, but also there's the capability to have the video hearings and video, like status hearings, those types of things at the housing unit. So a room that you can't hear what the conversation is, but so the inmate doesn't actually have to leave the housing unit in order to participate in a court hearing, or also to confer with their attorney as well. And I guess I'll talk about visitation one more level with that. In this facility, there will be video, but there will also be the ability to have contact visiting here. So we'll have a variety of different ways that visiting can take place. Each housing unit has the capability of doing the video visit at the unit. So again, inmates don't have to move within that. They'll do it within their housing unit. But again, we'll have a variety of different ways visiting can take place.
Thank you.
If you could provide us with jails that you've designed, your portfolio would be good for the council.
Sure. Yep, happy to. Yes, from the time that we actually had qualified to do this project, we've done more since that time, so happy to give you an update on those things. I will say this, I'm not going to take a commercial minute, but of facilities of this size, 800 beds or larger, which are considered the larger jails within the U.S. in the last 12 years or so, we know of 20 that have been designed or now are being built. HOK is participating in 16 of those 20. So this is definitely a specialty of ours, these very large detention centers. And I think one of the reasons that the selection committee was interested in working with us is because we have a lot of backlog of experience with the facilities, lessons learned, some things that we wouldn't do again that have been done in the past, and things that are, moving in the right direction. So again, I'm happy to provide you with that. To take a little bit more detailed look at the site, the front door to the facility is entered off of Transportation Boulevard. So that's at the lower right where the